Talking with the experts.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. My name is Rose Davidson and today my guest is Belle Niba, and Belle is from Cameroon and her topic is helping African become self-sufficient, and she thought that my podcast, because she's originally from Cameroon and her passion is to promote overcoming colonial hangover and how they can build self-sufficiency on the continent. Welcome, Belle.
Thank you, Rose.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about yourself.
So my name is Belle Niba, as you said. I'm a businesswoman. I have a media company called AfricanVibes.com, and I also have a digital marketing agency called Ubora Marketing. And one of my passionate subjects, which is what the title of the topic is, it's about overcoming, which is kind of why I even started African Vibes in the first place. So African Vibes was started because of the narrative of not having a full picture that was truly representative of the African story. And at first I waited for someone who knew the media business to do it, and nobody was doing it. And so I figured if you want to get something done, you might as well do it yourself. So I went on and started African Vibes to kind of, in my own little way, share the other side of Africa, not just the wars and the negative and all of that, but Africa's rising and showing the positive and the promise of what's to come. So that's how that came about.
Beautiful. And so I know there's, as you say, there's a colonial hangover. So I'm guessing that you might be in, well, I'm not going to guess. Whereabouts are you living at the moment? I know it's in Africa, but whereabouts?
Actually, I'm in the United States, but I am from West Africa.
Right.
And Cameroon, to be exact. And colonial hangover is, Africa has a very dark, and I say dark, history of colonialism because of what that left behind, right? So there were so not all of that was terrible, but part of what was lost during that colonial period was self-identity. And when you take away a person's identity, they struggle into the future, because then they would have to learn without their own history about who they are. And then you distort who they are. Who are they then? How can they love who they are when they don't even quite understand who they are? Because the lens that's now given to them as the measure of their identity is somebody else's lens. See, we all need a lens. Our history is our lens. Our history tells us of our heroes. Our history tells us of the things we don't want to repeat. Our history tells us who we are. So when you don't have your history and you don't have that kind of foundation, then it gets harder to know who you are. So then when you go to places in Africa, if you are dark, you are seen as less than. You see an outrage even here in the US, where even that culture permeates all the way here, and it's ingrained in the system in different ways. But we don't talk often about the fact that even in Africa, it's very much there. You know, your skin, which sounds really silly to me, but your skin tone, you know, means something. And those are the things I call colonial hangovers, is because when you don't know who you are, you start trying to value something else. And it doesn't mean that, you know, someone who is white or light or, you know, straight curly hair, that they're any less. It just means we're different. And we're all great and beautiful being different. But then we need to know that. We need to remember that. And for us to remember that, there are things in our past that we need to let go of, truly let go of. And there are things that are part of our history that we need to learn about. But then the doors we need to truly close. Instead of staring too long about what could have been, there comes a time when you look at the past and say, okay, this happened and I'm seeing that it's not working for me now, but can I start from where I am now and change that to make it better for my children? And that's what I mean by getting over the colonial hangover.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. As a Caucasian, though, you know, things that I say may be taken out of context, but you know, to me, I think, you know, if you're green, brown, purple, you know, it doesn't matter. But you know, having your own cultural identity, I suppose, is really, really important. I know, you know, even in the North America, the indigenous there, the Indian people, you know, they've lost their identities as well. And I think the white man really has a lot to answer for, and that's just my perspective. I think they have a lot to answer for stealing, and they did steal. In my opinion, they stole other cultures' identities, and I think it's quite wrong that you know, other cultures now have been left to pick up the pieces and try and find their identities and find their culture and go back to a time, you know, when they were who they were meant to be.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not just one person that made it happen or one race. I mean, I think, you know, even the Africans themselves played a part. And it's not something that people are comfortable talking about, but it's one of those things where those people being exploited, and then those that could have protected their own went along with some of it. So there are enough, you know, hands or blame to go around. At the same time, the reality is this has happened, right? And we are where we are. It requires all of us to now say, how do we make it better? Now you have the challenge, of course, where you would have a group of people saying, nothing is wrong. In my world, it's working. And I've actually had people saying, hey, it's all in your head. These things, the world is working. And then you have the people that are truly taking pause and saying, looking at the history, there's no way you come from that unscathed. You have to have been impacted, your ancestors, and it trickles down. The question then is, what do we do about that? So you cannot, and I'll use an example of Cameroon. So Cameroon is a country that existed before colonialism. Then it was colonized first by the Portuguese, and then you had the Germans. And then after, you know, the whole Hitler situation, it was split between the British and the French as a territory. Now, of course, all of these breaking up of a country is without nobody's asking Cameroonians, is this what you want? You know, they give part of the country to, they split it up and divide it up, and nobody's really asking what we want. And now you have a situation where you split up the country, then, you know, the whole independence fever hits Africa, and then they're asking, you know, the part of Cameroon that the British took over, you know, do you want to join Nigeria, or do you want to join the part of Cameroon that the French people took over? And they say, okay, we will join the Cameroon, and we would try to make it work. And then the Cameroonians in the north said, no, we will join Nigeria. So now this division happens. Fast forward, you know, so many years, the Cameroonians now that had adopted the English culture find themselves marginalized by the Cameroonians that had adopted the French culture, right? So there's this assimilation that's attempting to happen, adding more kerosene to the fire. So first, these Cameroonians were being pushed to forget who they were by adopting European, you know, identities. And then they embrace it, and then now they're trying to make it work. And one group, again, is trying to assimilate the other group. And what do you think would eventually happen? At some point, that is going to explode in everybody's face. But then when you look at where is this coming from, before you had a French-speaking or English-speaking, these people were just Cameroonians, right? And now you add this colonial aspect to it, and then it doesn't help that you still have, you know, European influence in the country. It creates a toxic bed of a lot of stuff. But then when you look at who are we? You know, who are we without all of that? Now, of course, you can't totally now start here without the fact that you're colonized now is part of your identity too. But it's not the only part of that identity. And that's what I struggle with at some point. And I say, you know what, at some point we have to decide who we are, not based on what somebody else is saying, this is who you are now, you know, but who do we want to be? How do we want to define ourselves? Like I sit today with my kids, my children are American children. They were born in the United States. Their identity is American, but their identity also is tied back to Africa. And I want them to embrace all of it. I don't want them to say, oh, I'm just African or I'm just American. They're all of it. And so I will not cheat them of their American history, but I would also want them to embrace what it means to have parents from Cameroon. Now, is their journey like mine? No, they have a completely different journey, different identity, different fabric that shapes them. But for me, we have to start by saying we need to embrace who we are, acknowledge that there's so much in our past that has caused a lot of fragments. But how do we pick up those fragments and rebuild? Like anybody that has gone through any kind of damage, as I call them, like damage, whether it's your past or whatever damage you've gone through, at some point, hard as it is, you have to find a way to put the pieces back together to even try to find something beautiful out of all of that.
Yeah, it's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, really, isn't it? Trying to fit all the pieces into the right places.
Absolutely.
And I think it's, you know, you've got to try and get together the people that are looking for change. And I mean, you've always got the ones that are looking for change, and then you've got the ones that are resisting the change, and then you've got the ones that sit in the middle and they really don't know where they want to be. And it's hard to, you know, get the ones that are resisting to even get them to the part where they're just in the middle, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't envy your task at all, and I really do think that but you really are on a good thing. I think you're on a good path. I mean, it's not just in Africa that needs change. I think the world in general needs a really great shake up. I think there's just so much going on that, I mean, this pandemic is just, I don't know, it's really, I think, made leaders look at themselves or look at their citizens a lot more and what they want, well, in certain countries anyway.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the pandemic forces, as much as it's a terrible situation, it's forced us in many respects to look at our world a little bit differently. I've seen more businesses start than I've ever seen in my lifetime. Like more people starting businesses, more people trying to find a way out of no way. And when I look at this, and I look at Africa too, I look at it and say, okay, this is a place where it's typically looked at as hopeless, there's not a lot of opportunity. But at the same time, there are a lot of avenues opening up in some countries, not all, but in some. A lot of opportunity. What we now have, which is unprecedented, is we have a global economy. I can sit today in the United States and I'm employing someone from South Africa or from Australia or from the Philippines or from Kenya. You know, I have people in my team from Kenya, Zimbabwe, and I'm in the United States and I'm giving a job to somebody in Africa, job that they can use to put food on the table. It's a very different dynamic. So when I look at these kinds of things, the way I look at it is we're no longer at the point where you have a problem and you're stuck because you're relying on just your government to help make a way. Now, in some countries, you still have that. But in many places, now you have the internet, places that allow that. You have the internet where if you were a student and schools were not functioning, you can continue your studies. If you were someone that was trying to put food on the table, you can now go look for a job from somebody anywhere in the world willing to employ you. It changes the dynamic. People are a lot more powerful now than I think even they realize. And those that realize have begun to use their power to change their circumstances. Just a few days ago in Nigeria, the youth actually rose up. They went out on the streets because the Nigerian government had this police force that was very abusive to the population. Now,
okay.
it's not even a new thing, but the people have taken it for a while, and they organized themselves through social media. Celebrities arranged, and they all just went out and said, we've had enough. We are not, kind of what we saw in the US, where people were like, enough, and all of a sudden it became a global phenomenon. If that was never possible before.
No.
Now the average person can have a voice that is so powerful through community that it impacts the decision makers at a point where we change policy or we change just the path that we're going. It causes people to pause and look and start seeing one another for who they really are. So it's an unprecedented time. So when I'm looking at it, whether it's from an African lens, whether it's as a woman, a Black woman, or whatever that lens is, I look at it as more than ever, we have an opportunity to take our own, to be the drivers in our own future. We are the opportunity now to say, things may not be perfect, but we can shape that future. We actually have tools now. We have ways to create a future, a better future. If it was women not being paid properly because there is the gender gap here, then as women, we could create businesses that close that gap. Instead of waiting for a male-dominated industry to solve the problem, we could say, you know what, let's handle that problem, and then we don't have to complain about it because if they're not going to fix it, let's fix it, and then they'll catch up to us. Yeah. If you're sitting in Africa and you're in a village, and like the guy that there was this guy somewhere in East Africa where his village, they were struggling with crops, and he went and read a book and built a windmill. He read a book and he solved the problem because the information was in a book, and they did a movie out of that. I was quite impressed with this guy. But we can now, information is now almost democratic. You can get information and you can act on it. So it's not enough anymore to say, we had this dark past and oh my gosh, it was terrible. Now we need to say, we had this dark past. We know it did not serve us, but we have what it takes to write our own stories. We have what it takes to say, this is what my new chapter is going to be, whether it's, regardless of what situation you're going through, we hold the pen now. And that's how I feel like the world has evolved to a point now where we actually can hold the pen and write our own stories and then live those stories so our children now have a new picture to look at of what a better future could look like.
Absolutely. I love how you have these great analogies. They're really wonderful. I had a guest on a few days ago, and she's actually encouraging women entrepreneurs in Ethiopia. She was stationed there for a time. She originally comes from, doesn't come from Ethiopia, but yeah, she was there for a time. She was stationed there, and she was stuck in a small town. And she discovered that her new passion now is to help women in business to venture out into the business world. And yeah, she, even though she's operating from the UAE, yeah, she's just still helping these women. And she had an amazing story to tell. It was really, really good. And helping these women overcome, their challenges, their fears, and build resilience, I thought was absolutely kudos to her for doing it, and helping these women start these small businesses whilst, everyone was in lockdown, and, seeing that, they could get food on the tables, and they could, get food to the markets, and, it was just an amazing story. I should probably put the two of you in touch with each other, and you'd have.
I would love, because I like meeting people who solve problems.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
I love it when, or let me put it this way, I love it when people create opportunities where people can then find their own strength through those opportunities. because sometimes when you've been in a situation where you're trying to just find room for air for most of your life, then it starts feeling hopeless. It starts feeling like there's just no way for you to come up for air. Sometimes you need a little help for someone to say, actually, if you go this way, you can, catch your breath. And so the lady you're mentioning is giving these women that opportunity. And I feel that's kind of what this world needs. Is we cannot afford to say, to dismiss the ills of the past. At the same time, the way we fix that is by sending that hand and pulling other people up, regardless of what it is, because we all have our baggage. We all have things that in one way or another will challenge us or hold us back, whether it's someone that was personally trying to put you down, or whether it's systemic or whatever it was. But then I think what always gives me hope is when you see people who may either have been in the class of privilege, or who have some kind of privilege. It doesn't matter the race, because privilege comes in many forms. Pausing to take the time to look back and say, I can at least pull somebody up.
Yeah.
It just needs you pulling one person up, and then the chain begins. And if we start many more of these chains, the world as we know it slowly starts evolving. Because I've kind of seen also, this year has really been a year of revelation. I've seen people be really kind, and I've seen people be so mean. It's been almost a shock to me that people can be, there can be that much darkness in people. But then it just reminds us how hard we have to work to permeate more love. Because when people are projecting certain things, it's because they're struggling with some kind of thing inside too. And so when you come from a place where a lot of negativity has been projected, you have to now work double speed to pull the light in, so that you're not carrying more of that out into your world. So that's how I like to look at it, is I really celebrate everyone that's doing whatever they can to pull someone up. Because we need more of those kinds of chains going.
Yeah, change only takes one person. It only takes one raindrop to start a ripple, and the ripple effect is absolutely amazing. You touch one person's life with goodness, and that person will share and just keeps going and going and going. And I think it's a beautiful effect. I love it, and I think there should be more of it. I think there should be more, raindrops in puddles,
Oh, yes.
For that ripple effect to happen. So, yeah. So, what else would you like to share with us today, Bill?
Well, just that my hope, of course, it's more from my very, wish for all of us, is always that we remember to be kind, that we remember that our journeys have not all been the same. I know that is kind of hard for some people, because when you look, if your life has not been great and somebody's saying, oh my gosh, my life has been terrible, you look at them and say, well, mine hasn't been great either. But I think the kindest thing you can do to somebody is listen. The kindest thing you can do is try to understand. It's not to just say, well, stop complaining. It's to give them an opportunity to voice their pain, and then give them hope. Not invalidate that pain. There are many people that have been through a lot of things. Even as a Black woman, I learned a lot about what African Americans in the United States had encountered this year. And I've been in this country for over 2 decades. And this was the first time I learned a lot. I mean, I've encountered myself certain things, but the advantage you have when you're in a space where things are happening to you, but you're not even aware of the context, is it bounces off you. You see it, it makes you pause. If somebody's not nice to you, you can make it as this is just that person, and you can move on. But if you've lived it all your life and that's all you know, you see it everywhere. And it really mentally holds you in the cage. So this was the first time I used to say, oh no, I have all these, good people, and people that I thought were genuine good people surprised me, and there are days I go out for walks in my neighborhood, people would say hi. And they just look at you like, what are you doing here? And you take that. Now, before it didn't bother me, but this year was the first time I actually started paying attention because of the tension that's around. Now, I know there's so many good people out there who look at this stuff and say, this is just unacceptable. And I agree, it is. And the way you counter it is when you show kindness to people, it softens the blow when somebody else is unkind to them. So now for me, even if somebody's not going to smile or be nice to me, I'm nice to them anyway, because I just tell myself, whatever darkness is surrounding them right now, maybe my being kind to them may not be obvious right now. Maybe it would give them that ray they needed much later. But then I just do that anyway, because people are carrying whatever they're carrying. There's enough hate in this world that we kind of need to blanket out by just projecting good, positive light into the space that we all share.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I agree. There's too much ugliness to not bring in, happiness or love or, whatever it happens to be. I mean, I'm a great believer in projecting all the good things. Despite my challenging background, I've turned out to be one of those loving people, and I should be really hateful, but I'm not. I think that, there's good in everybody. And, I like to look at the positives rather than the negatives. I try to be optimistic because I think, if I'm negative and a pessimist, it's just projecting that, and then the world and, the universe won't, the vibes you send out are what you receive. So if you are sending out blackness, you're going to receive blackness. You have to project happiness, and you're right, kindness is one of the things that I believe is great. You're kind to a kitten, you're kind to a puppy, you're kind to, why can't you be kind to a person? It's the same thing. Love in your heart, it's got to be there.
Oh, absolutely. And I think people struggle. I mean, I was listening to your other interview and I was so moved, and I kept thinking, my goodness, this woman is incredible. And then you have this smile on your face, and I kept thinking, she just exudes this ray of sunshine. And I think that's what we need, right? It's not that we haven't been through stuff, because we have. It's that in spite of it, we're not letting that be our story. Because we could, like you said, it could be that, and it would just be a dark hole inside of you.
That's right.
But you choose not to make it that way. You literally are making a decision to write a different story. There are other people that have not been able to write a different story. They have a very dark past, and they carry it with them, because it's not easy either. But what makes it a little easier is when people are a little kinder. Even when you yourself may not feel like projecting kindness, but if everybody else was giving you the kind vibe, it kind of softens whatever it is that you are struggling with.
We need to soften. I don't know. And as women, I think, we are the nurturers. We've been brought up to be nurturers, and I think, we need to project our voices a bit more loudly.
Yes.
Rather than sitting back and, watching the world pass us by. We need to do, like this podcast, I only just started it, to help business owners, because a lot of business owners, obviously through pandemic, have been challenged with, getting their voices heard. So I just thought this podcast was a great opportunity for business owners to give business owners advice and, share stories. And and I think that's what needs to happen. People need to share their stories. It doesn't matter what race you are, where you come from, what your past is. You need to share your stories, and you need to be vocal. You don't need to be violent. But vocal is good.
I totally agree, because I've seen extreme reactions on many different fronts when it comes to business. one thing that I did admire, there's a business group I belong to on Facebook. I do a lot of my marketing on Facebook. And so when the US was having a lot of the whole, Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, the video came out. Truth is, I normally don't watch TV because to me, there's a lot of negativity on TV.
Oh, yes, there is.
I kind of have to manage what's happening. So I didn't even know what was going on. And then, someone kept saying, you have to watch this video. You haven't watched. I was like, what is it? And then I watched this video that was quite disturbing, that brought me to tears. And I tried to package it and put it in the corner to try to get past it. So I remember going to this group, and we're like 50,000 business women, and it's women who are moms. And because I'm a mom, and we kind of support each other through the group. And so the owner of the group, and I don't blame her, I'd have done the same thing, it was business as usual. And we were just going business as usual. And some of the women in the group, they're white women, were really upset with her, saying, you have to address it. We have to talk about this. We can't continue business as usual. We have to see how we women can help with this. And at first I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be terrible. Race issues in the business forum? Are you kidding me? This is bad. But then I was quite surprised how it ended up playing out. Now, the lady who owns the group struggled through it. She stumbled through it. And the people that held her accountable were fellow white women. But what that did for her was it took her on a journey that she didn't even realize she needed to go on. And it helped her look at ways in which she may not even have intentionally realized how she was projecting. And she created an advisory, group that was diverse to help her. But it made the group even better. What touched me the most was I learned more from these white women who were trying to. That's where I learned a lot about what was going on. From them, books that they recommended. What I saw though was, as business owners, and I'm going back to the point about using our voice. While I normally would not always like to be political, what I've learned is my values are not negotiable for me. And I like to know that the people I'm working with, I like to know what they stand for. I like to know I'm working with kind people. I like to know I'm working with compassionate people. And so before, occasionally I would kind of say what I think, but I tried to shy away from it. But now I'm a little bit more vocal about issues that I care a lot about, issues I support. Now, I still maintain my distance from straight up political, vote for this or vote for that. That I'm not really into that. But for little human, rights type of things, or just injustices, those are things I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about issues that affect women, like domestic abuse and those kinds of things. I'll speak up against them because we need to. We need to be able to say, this is something we need to talk about, whether it's as women, whether it's domestic abuse or whatever it is. We need to be able, even as entrepreneurs, because we have influence, to use that influence for the better. And again, it may not be that it's not what you care about, whether it's pet abuse that you care about. But if we're not saying anything, and I believe as entrepreneurs, we have a lot of influence. It's kind of good for people to know what you stand for. And I totally agree with you that we don't need to be contentious. We don't need to make it into a fight. I think we can say what we think, say what we stand for, say what's important to us without necessarily making it a problem. We can say it and have conversations about it, but then know that we have an opportunity to shape this world for the better for all of us. So having that voice is important.
It is very important, And as you say, as entrepreneurs, I think we have a big opportunity to voice our, I guess, an opinion or whatever, but, keeping it nice. Don't, you're not, it's an opinion, it's just yours, and if someone doesn't like it, well, that's their issue and not your issue. Like, so it's not my issue if I voice something, but it's the other person's, because they, they don't have to agree with me, but
absolutely.
But we just, as entrepreneurs, as you say, we have more opportunities to shape this world than we believe, and women really have to stand up and start being counted as a voice, not just as the feminist movement that I think's totally gone wrong. It's not what the feminist movement started out to be in the 60s. I mean, the feminist movement's been around since the 1800s when the women wanted to get the vote, and then they got the bra burning in the 60s and 70s and whatever. But I think modern feminism has gone the totally opposite direction of what it was intended to be, and have disempowered men, and when that wasn't the plan, that wasn't what it was meant to be. It was just meant to me that we were to be equal to men, not to disempower them in any way, and not to take away any of the the niceties of society, like having your chair pulled out at a dinner table, or
oh my gosh, okay, I don't feel so alone in that. I'm like, is she gonna say it? Because I love that. I normally say maybe they shouldn't call me it. I don't know that I would call myself a feminist these days, because I believe in equality, but I want my chair pulled.
Yeah,
I don't like someone opening the door for me.
No, but I will do the same for a man. If I'm the first one to the door, I will open the door for him, or I will open the lift for him. Or I will let him enter the lift before I do, But honestly, I think, just as I said, feminism's just gone right. Just, it's stupid, and it just drives me nuts. It really does, It just wasn't the intention of the movement in the first place.
Yeah, I of course I have my own views on feminism that will not make me terribly popular, but I mean, I feel like we have roles. I feel that I'm not in the traditional sense. I feel that what has evolved is our roles. What we haven't addressed as women and even as men is we've had a dynamic change. Before, the man went out, earned the bread, and the woman was home and mending the kids and making sure that things were fine. Now the husband can go to work and the woman is working. That's a very different dynamic. The struggle has been sometimes is how do we make that work, where you still have some men wanting the woman to still be in the traditional role, and the woman saying, I can't do that, not with this added burden on me. I don't necessarily mean that now means that, the man should no longer be the man. I feel that we're trying too much to say apples and oranges are the same, and they're not. They will never be the same. I don't yet know that a man can have a baby. Maybe that's going to happen.
Oh, that'd be nice if they could.
In a maternity room, pumping out a baby, then I'll be like, okay, I think I have to eat some of my words. And in the same token, there are things a woman just can't do. A woman is not going to have sperm. It's just not how she's made, right? So we can at least agree that we're two different types. We're one apple and an orange. We're different. And we would have different contributions that we bring that we can all respect. What I will say, however, is if I'm doing the same work that you're doing, I just want to be paid the same.
Absolutely.
I cannot deny that we're different. And because we're different, we cannot operate the exact same way. But when it comes to certain things, I want to be given the exact same treatment if I'm doing the same work. So I just don't think that's a blanket statement to say, oh, don't open my door. It means you're thinking I'm weak. And I don't think so. That's not how I interpret that, though. I enjoy it when my husband opens my door for me.
Why? I feel special. And I like it, if a man's not sleazy and says, oh, did you look nice today? If it's someone that you know. And
I don't mind it. Like, give me a compliment. Thank you. I appreciate it. So I think I would agree that we kind of pushed it a little bit. And I've had debates on Facebook sometimes on this, where the men are like, oh my goodness, women are just not giving us room to be men. They want to wear the pants and they want to do all of that. And I have to agree with some of that. Is you cannot be in a house where there has to be someone that is the man and someone that is the woman, and it's a different role. And if you want to be that guy of the house, but you're the woman, and then you kind of take away everything from the man. He just needs a little bit of something, but we take it all away. And then at the same time, we want him to be our special, perfect, whatever fabrication in our minds that this guy is. I don't see it working that way.
No. And you know, our brains work differently too, you know, men think differently than women.
Absolutely.
And that's just the way, it's just nature. But but yeah, and you can't change what nature has intended, so.
No, we can't. So we kind of, I like how you started. We've kind of taken things to a whole different.
We have, yeah.
You know, we've just gone, woo, you know.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. Anyway, we'll have to leave it there. I really have enjoyed this conversation. It has been absolutely wonderful. It's one of the best ones I've had in a long time. I will email you, and I will put you in touch with that other young lady.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
And you two can collaborate on the things that you are doing, because I think it will work out perfectly for you, both of you, working towards a common goal. So. Oh
yes.
Yeah.
That would be wonderful.
It's been lovely to meet you, Belle. I am so sorry that it started off so late, but it's been a great pleasure, and I hope we can chat again. I'd like to have you on again some other time.
Oh, my pleasure, Rose. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.